Welcome to the Night Tube. I'm Stephen Knight, and I'm very pleased to welcome Debbie Heyton to the show. Debbie, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Stephen. Good to talk to you.
You too. I was just saying to you before we started, I've been taking an interest in a lot of your writing and output on the sort of gender ideology wars over the last several months. And I think you just said it. You seem to be annoying all the right people, which is usually a great sign. So before we get into the specifics of that, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. How would you describe what you do to others?
Well, what do I do? I'd probably say that I'm a teacher. I'm a trade union activist and I'm a journalist. So those are the things that I do for a living. But I'm probably here because of the impact of my writing on this gender debate. I transitioned myself 9 years ago in 2012. And my original aim was to keep my job and stay out of the press. But
well done.
I succeeded on the first one, but the second one, it was probably about 5 years ago when I just became increasingly concerned and then exasperated with things that were being said, which I thought was nonsense. And I was expected to believe this nonsense. And I've never been very good at being told what to do by anybody. So I started saying what I thought about it. And when I started receiving opposition and people were countering this, rather than shut up, I thought, well, if it's upsetting people, why is it upsetting people? And I analysed what I was doing, and though I couldn't identify anything untoward in what I was writing, it just seemed to me to be sound common sense. But it was certainly upsetting people. So I've kept going and not shut up.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me that the collision between what is true and what everyone is expected to say about a topic. Now, I suppose obviously the obvious thing is there is a lot of bigotry directed toward trans people, a lot of ignorance as well. There's also quite a lot of sincere curiosity and fascination, people generally trying to understand how somebody could make such a decision and what it's like to live as a trans person. And I'm just wondering, how comfortable are you talking about that aspect of your life, about your transition and why you made that choice, what it was like dealing with those issues?
Yes, I'm quite happy to talk, Stephen. It's interesting what you were saying there about people are inquisitive. I think it's just this concept of not necessarily being challenged as a person, but challenging what we're saying. And I think that's normal in human society to challenge each other. But what's happened is that there's just this perception among trans people that when people challenge us, it's because they don't like us or they hate us. Whereas what you're saying is it's just that people are inquisitive. And I'm quite happy to talk about anything within reason about my life. Yeah.
So, in that being said, then, how do you articulate your situation? What do you think best explains something that is still, however prominent it is in our discussion in mainstream now, it's still quite rare. You're still within a minority. So, what kind of things can you point to help people better understand people who transition?
Right, I'd say it was a psychological condition that as human beings we have all sorts of different psychologies. It's what makes the human race is that we're all different. And some people have got all sorts of differences, and some of those can cause some problems. And some people, for example, might think they're too thin, they're too fat. Some people have got issues about their, how they present themselves. Some people will spend an awful lot of money on, say, facial surgery to improve their looks, when everybody around them will think, well, you look beautiful already. But this is a normal part of human society. It's human people, and some of us just would have preferred our bodies to be the other sex, and I think that's all it comes down to. For one reason or another, we would have preferred our bodies to be bodies of the opposite sex. It doesn't mean we are the opposite sex. It's just yet another psychological condition that we happen to have.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. With you saying it's a psychological condition, more often than not, psychological issues are something that are treated rather than affirmed. And I suppose that's where we get into tricky territory with transitioning, Because for some people, such as yourself, it may make perfect sense and may be the solution. For other people, it may not. There's a lot of talk about people desisting from said psychological conditions before they need to take the plunge into sort of life-changing alterations. And how do we find that line between treating people and getting them to a better place psychologically, or going down the route of transition?
Well, that's important. It is a psychological condition, and because it's one that needs treatment, technically speaking, it's a psychological disorder. But to say that trans people have a psychological disorder is a bit of a no-no. Don't go writing that on Twitter, Steve. No, you'll get you will get the you'll get the Twitter thought police coming after you.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. So it's a condition that we'd really like our bodies to be opposite sex. And do you treat this through psychotherapy? Do you treat it through surgery? Now, the treatment which you've mentioned, this idea of change, the affirmation, really goes back to American psychologists years ago, and it was Harry Benjamin who said that he'd worked with trans people and he found it impossible to change the mind, so why not let's change the body? And that's what the treatment has been. So we can't change the mind, so we'll change the body. But I really do think, after 10 years on from when I was really struggling with this, perhaps we should be doing better for everybody and saying, how can we not change the mind, not change the body, but how can we reconcile the mind to the body? And that's what we should be looking at researching, because if we can do that and make people comfortable in their bodies, that I think is a better place to be, because what is being done, and as you quite rightly pointed out, the affirmation model isn't right for everybody, and you can't tell it's right or wrong before you go through it all, and then when you've gone through it all, it's too late because you can't go back. And these are huge problems, especially with children these days.
Yeah, I mean that's an incredibly poignant point to make, because that seems to be the concern at the moment, that there are young children who may be a little bit confused or just going through perfectly ordinary things you go through during puberty or adolescence, or may just be discovering they're gay, for instance, that might be encouraged down a particular path because of how prominent gender ideologies become. Now, I think that's true. I think that does happen. I think that's a massive issue. But a lot of people on the other side will say, well, this is just scaremongering of the same type that gay people faced when they were trying to claim their rights. This idea of stay away from my kids, it's immoral, it's a sin, they shouldn't marry, etc. This kind of bigoted mentality. And how can somebody like me who's, approaching late 30s, how can I check my biases and make sure I'm not just becoming hopelessly bigoted towards the new thing in the same way people were towards gay people?
Well, to be bigoted, Stephen, bigoted actually means that you're intolerant of other people's views. Right. And so it's a myth, but people keep using it. You're a bigot because you disagree with me. But I would argue that if they are intolerant of your views, then perhaps the bigotry is the other way around. But that's an aside. You talked about the analogy with gay rights, but it's actually very different. Just because we are two oppressed classes, gay people and trans people have both been oppressed in the past and still both face oppression today, and we tend to face oppression from the same group of people, if I'm honest. The two things have been conflated together, but they're very different. Gay rights are universal. What gay people fought for was the right to marry somebody of the same sex, hold hands with somebody in the same sex walking down the street without getting rocks lobbed at them, to have sex with somebody of the same sex and with the same basic rules as everybody else, to serve in the army. Those were the rights that they fought for. But those are universal. Anybody, you or I, can walk down the street holding somebody's hand of the same sex. We can marry somebody of either sex. It's open to everybody. We may not choose to do it, but it's there. These are universal rights that have been fought for by gay people. What we're looking at on trans rights here, yes, the right not to be abused walking down the street for being trans is an important one. The right not to be dismissed from my job because I'm trans is important. But those rights are also universal. So, for example, if somebody was perceived to be trans, we weren't really trans, but they were perceived to be trans, they're also protected. But what we've had here is two things which I think is really important and needs picking out from that. One is the right to take rights which were really made for somebody else, which is where women's rights have come under attack, so that male people like me have seen it as their right to inherit the rights of women, which I don't think we do. So that's one thing. But then it's the impact on children, an impact on children there, thinking, well, I don't know whether I am gay, I'm straight, I'm trans, or whatever. But if children are thinking about their sexuality, they're thinking about their sexuality, fine. We're all human beings. We need to think about these things. But what comes with the trans debate is this prospect of life. They would say life-affirming treatment, but it could be life-changing treatment, life-destroying treatment on the other hand, where children are being sold a story, sold a lie, if you want to be explicit about it, that they can change their sex, that there are drugs and surgeries available to them by which they can change their sex, which doesn't do children any good. In this country now, this is being withheld, I think, for good reason. The NHS is very cautious about this. Elsewhere in the world, in the United States, they are far more affirming in their treatment. But even in the UK, where much of it is denied, the psychological impact on children is devastating. To say to an 11 or 12-year-old child who is beginning to develop into puberty and adolescence that they could be the others, that you could be the other sex, but some horrible people have decided that you can't be. It will have a deleterious impact on those kids. We're harming children by this. We're telling them lies. We're either providing treatment that changes their bodies irreversibly, medicates them, potentially sterilizes them. Before they become an adult, it's just crazy. Or psychologically damage them by saying there is this treatment which would solve all your problems, but some nasty people out there won't let you have it. It is horrendous, this, and it's a world away from the gay rights that I knew when I was growing up in the 1980s. The battle over that, a world away.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that in a moment with specific reference to Stonewall, I suppose. But I mean, you touched on something interesting there about the perceived ability to change your sex if you can just get access to the correct procedures or medical intervention. And you're just correct when you talk about there only being two sexes. It seems one of the most obvious things in human biology. I can't understand how we've got to a point where everyone's tiptoeing around this very simple distinction. So how have we got, first of all, how would you define sex or male and female? And how have we got to the point where doing so has become very taboo in society, strangely?
Yeah, I'll start by defining male and female. I'm a science teacher.
That helps. That really helps.
Yeah. Male and female, the two sexes, goes back about 1.2 billion years. And it's central to reproduction, is sex. Sexual reproduction is more efficient and works better than asexual reproduction, because asexual reproduction can only really at best make a copy of what's gone before. And if things go wrong, it often gets worse, whereas sexual reproduction can take the best from both parents. So sexual reproduction has the ability to improve, and through the process of evolution. I'm going back. Evolution used to be really controversial, but when I was growing up, it wasn't. Everybody accepted this idea of evolution. This is central to sexual reproduction. And we know this.
The attacks towards evolution used to come from sort of fundamentalist Christians, and now they're coming from secular progressives.
Yeah, so sex is there. Now, sex is in trees. Trees have male and female parts, and the key is that they've got different cells. There's male cells and female cells. When they join, you know this. I know this. Everybody
it's kid
knows
stuff.
this.
It's kid stuff.
You see farmyard animals having sex. You see this, and you know exactly which one's the male and which one's the female. But what's happened here is there's an ideology around that says human beings are better than this, that we're not like the rest of the animals. So you touched on there about the religious side. There is a religion here. Religion can pick human beings out from creation and separate us out from the rest of creation. That we've got souls. We're different to the rest of creation. Now I am a Christian, by the way, so I do believe that
you are
human
really
beings
punching your weight on the intersectional scale, aren't you?
Yeah. So I'm a Christian, so I believe I can have a relationship with God, etc., etc., etc. But we're not here to talk about that. Right. I'm also a scientist, and I also believe that we are part of creation, and we're the same as every other species. So just like the other apes, have male and female, just like Stephen, when I was a kid, we got this cat, and we were told that it was a female cat. The pet shop, we wanted a female cat, not a male cat. So the pet shop owners sold us this as a female cat. And we believed it, of course, took the cat home. 6 weeks later, we took it to the vets, and the vet said, I know you asked for your cat to be spared, but I castrated him. I thought that was all right. And so, animals have that sex. Now, I would say that human beings are nothing special. Human beings have sexes just like everybody else. And I am male because, for the same reason that my cat was male and parts of trees are male, is that I produced sperm, effectively. And that is the distinction of the male sex. The male sex produces sperm, the female sex produces eggs. And that is the distinction. And that's what I did. So therefore, I'm male. Now, I don't see a problem with that. I really don't. I have this T-shirt. It got me into an awful lot of hot water for this T-shirt. It says trans women are male. No, it's worse than that. It said trans women are men. Get over it.
That's great. That's very good.
People who just seem to get into such a mess when anybody contradicts them or disagrees with them or comes up with a different idea. And I just think, well, your philosophy that you've mentioned Stonewall, trans women are women, get over it, doesn't appear to be giving you a lot of peace. But why is this impacting? Society? I think there's a view that, as human beings, we want everything. So we want to be able to change sex. We separate ourselves off from the rest of nature that, my cat can't change sex. But as human beings, we're somehow better than this. What we want is better than what we are. Is more important than what we are. And crucially, feelings are what is crucial. If we feel something, we should have it, and we should be able to have it. And those feelings have been promoted above facts when the facts say otherwise.
Yeah, that's a great point. Trans women and men, get over it. I mean, that's wonderful, because that is true. And that should be something you should be able to say and still maintain the same level of dignity and rights and things like that without opposition. Yeah, that's wonderful. So I suppose we touched on Stonewall there, and Stonewall's been under fire for a long time from the sort of gender critical activist, and it's become prominent in our discussion recently because of a BBC podcast investigation, which you took part in, which I listened to, and I thought you were great. So I suppose this goes back to something earlier we were talking about, and that's the conflation between gay rights and trans issues. And we have the whole LGBT movement. The T obviously is supposed to represent transsexuals, and Stonewall appears to have become almost exclusively focused on that issue over the last several years, whereas before it was known primarily for championing gay rights and did a lot of good work. So I suppose I just want to get your perspective on how close those things are to each other, related to issues, concerns, rights, that they should be included under one umbrella? Or do you think, as someone like the LGB Alliance thinks, they should be completely separate? Where do you stand on this debate?
Well, I think there's room for both. And I think the LGBT Alliance would say that there's room for both as well. I mentioned before that gay, lesbian and bisexual people suffer oppression in society. Trans people also suffer oppression in society from the same people. So it makes sense for us to come together and campaign alongside each other for, for a safer society. That makes absolute sense. But there are differences as well. And trans people have long had organisations of our own. You know, there are organisations that campaign on trans rights and trans rights alone. And you can name them. You know, there's mermaids, gendered intelligence, gyras. You know, you can go on beyond that. You know, these organisations are purely concerned about trans issues. Well, why shouldn't LGBT people have organisations which campaign on their issues? You know, this is what I don't understand. Why it's perceived to be hateful and harmful to campaign on LGBT rights alone, but not on trans rights alone. It doesn't make sense. Now, going back to Stonewall historically had nothing to do with trans rights. And, you know, under Ben Summerskill, they just had no interest in it. They didn't hate trans people. They just said it's nothing to do with us. And that was their position. Just like the LGBT Alliance position now is that they don't hate trans people at all. You know, in fact, I'm good friends with them. But what they'll say is that that because they're LGBT, they don't have the necessary expertise in trans rights to campaign on that. You know, Debbie, you and trans people campaign on that, which is the line we come from. So where have Stonewall? What's happened to Stonewall? Well, by 2014, 2015, the main issues that Stonewall was formed to deal with had all been addressed. You know, Section 28 had been repealed. You know, that was the big thing. Equal marriage had been won. The age of consent had been legalised. The age of consent had been equalised, and trans people could serve in the military. So all those campaigns are we're finished. We're done. Now, it's still not a perfect world for gay, lesbian and bisexual people in the UK. It's still got discrimination to deal with, but those campaigns don't tend to bring in lots of funding. Nobody, you know, it's not the high profile campaigning. It's just bread and butter stuff that charities do. So they had a decision. Do you try to carry on with LGBT rights when it probably isn't going to be bringing in a lot of funding? Do you wind the organisation down? And when you're in a position like Stonewall was 5-6 years ago, when they've got a big staff and huge influence with government, you know, that's becoming more obvious. You mentioned Stephen Nolan's podcast. The influence that Stonewall has had with government is enormous. So you're they're an organisation with a lot of staff in a privileged position. What do? And then the big next item on the agenda is trans rights. This is being pushed across the world. And so they jumped on this trans bandwagon. They decided they were going to be trans inclusive. And by now they seem to be trans exclusive, really, in that that's all they do. Or perhaps it's Q rights. Perhaps it's the Q they're interested in now. You know, it's queer people's rights, whoever this group is. I'm not necessarily
It's very difficult to pin down a definition, isn't it, of queer?
Yeah.
It sets off alarm bells straight away.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who this group is, and why. Anyhow, that's you. We mentioned trans rights. Yes, Stonewall has become fixated on trans, but they've also become fixated on this because it's a means to transform society, and it's maintained influence. You know, Stonewall. When governments look for consultation, Stonewall are always invited to give evidence. Stonewall are always listened to, so they've got that influence there, and that drives the need for have more influence. I know what people are like. You know, if you think you're making a difference, you enjoy making a difference. And Stonewall are certainly making a difference. I just argued it was a malign difference at the moment. I don't think they're helping.
That was going to be my next question, because obviously they are very influential, and like you say, a lot of corporate entities and even government ones tend to try and get the approval of Stonewall to sort of tick a box and champion their sort of pro-trans credentials. That seems to be changing now as a result of this Nolan Investigates podcast. But I suppose it wouldn't necessarily be an issue, Stonewall sort of switching in tact and interest, if they were making sense on this issue and actually helping the issues they claim to care about. You seem to, you quite openly said you don't think they're helping the issue. In what way are they causing damage to this discussion, do you think?
Well, they moved us away from reality into a land of fantasy that we can all be defined by our feelings rather than our facts. So I think that's harmful, because once you move away from reality is, you know where you are with reality. We can all agree on the truth, and you can all agree on what's right. You can find your principles, you can agree on truths, and you look for evidence. And hopefully what is right is what goes forwards. Whereas when we're considering feelings and what's going on in people's minds, when there's a conflict of feelings, then what do? How do you judge one person's feelings against another person's feelings? Whose feelings are better? There's no basis on which you can judge that. There's only two things you do instead. One is, who is the most powerful person, or who has got the most friends? And sometimes those things overlap. Who's got powerful friends? And that's the person whose feelings win the day, irrespective of whether they're right or wrong. And that's been going on for the last 5 years. And Stonewall have been able to do that because of their no debate line. You know, no debate. We're not debating people's right to exist, so we won't debate it. So we've never had this conversation with them. Now, you know, I looked at this and I thought, well, I'm a trans person living in society. Stonewall is purporting to be campaigning for me, and always say no debate on trans lives. And I thought, well, if you're not going to debate it, I will. And I'm not the only one who's done that. Others have done it too. So Stonewall have stood away from the debate, saying no debate, and the debate has gone on without them. You know, that has happened. And mud has been hurled at us for being in this debate, that we're debating trans people's lives and trans people's very right to exist. But we've maintained that debate. I think since what you mentioned about the Nolan podcast, which I think are excellent, and also the reports of Liz Truss's announcement about government departments should pull out of Stonewall. Stonewall have realised that this no debate strategy is not working. So they are starting to debate. And it was just last week, this week that we're having this conversation, Nancy Kelly has been interviewed on Woman's Hour. Nancy Kelly is the chief executive officer of Stonewall. So she's been interviewed debating. And questions were asked of her to say, well, Stonewall's trying to remove the word mother from policy. Oh, no, we're not doing that. Stonewall would never do anything like that. And then, lo and behold, we find that Stonewall's been writing to employers, telling them you will score more highly in the Equality Workplace Index if perhaps you substitute a more gender-neutral term for the word mother. So, what's going on here? They have been given this advice, but as soon as they're then having to defend it, it's indefensible. And they know it's indefensible. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks going forwards. But we live in such a strange world, Stephen. It's almost like that, it's right at the end of 1984 when George Orwell writes, Oceania was at war with East Asia, and Oceania had always been at war with East Asia. It almost feels like we'll get that Stonewall wasn't trying to erase the word mother, and Stonewall had never tried to erase the word mother. It's where we seem to be.
Yeah, I think the term Orwellian does get thrown around a lot, but I do think it's very apt in this situation for sure. So you mentioned there that Stonewall ostensibly claimed to represent the interest of people like you, trans people, but you obviously are at odds with their ideology. And I suppose my question is there a perception from people that you're trans, therefore you must by default have a specific set of political views and a specific worldview. I suppose you must confuse a lot of people as soon as you start speaking to them, I imagine.
What they say is, because I have the worldview that I do, I can't really be trans.
You've been excommunicated.
So I'm an apostate who's been excommunicated. Not really trans, Debbie, because I'm told that being trans is having basically what they think is you've got a female brain inside a male body, and that's what makes you trans. And I say I've got a male brain inside a male body. I just prefer to present myself in a way more typical of females. So you're not really trans, Debbie, because I deny the creed. You know, the creed is that of this ideology, pseudo-religion, if you like, you know, that trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary people are valid. That's the creed, and I think it's nonsense. And because of that, I can't possibly be trans.
How would you describe your political compass then? Where would you place yourself on it? I mean, it's getting harder to know, given the two extremes seem to be getting a lot of attention. I count myself as centre-left, but I seem to be clinging more to the centre the more extreme it gets on either side. I don't know where you'd place yourself.
Well, on traditional left-right economic grounds, I'm quite far over to the left. I believe in the fair distribution of assets. You know, I think we've got the inequality of wealth in the world appalls me. It really does. So economically, I lie quite a long way to the left. I really do. In terms of social policy, I'm a social liberal. I really, and I'm still a social liberal. I believe that people should be able to live their lives free from government interference, and to be able to live the lives that they wish. So under traditional social liberal ideas, I'm against things like ID cards, totally against that. I am pro gay rights, social liberal stuff. That's me. Politically, if you analyze my politics on that like political compass, that left right, liberal conservative line, I always fall somewhere down near, Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. These people who believed in social justice, economic fairness, but also this. People should just be free to be themselves. That's where I fall naturally. But the problem is, and this is why I get in trouble politically, because that sort of political mindset, which is naturally me, that's just been overrun by people who are just so naive that we can be nice to each other without others taking advantage. So the economically left, social liberal, also must not be naive, because it's so easy for us all to be down in that area, that bottom left quadrant of the political compass, where we think if everybody was like us, the world would be a nicer place. We wouldn't have any authoritarian bigots telling us what to do. We wouldn't have any nasty capitalists seizing all the assets for themselves. The world would be a utopia. But the problem is, if it was a utopia, it would contain human beings. And as human beings, we're very naive if we wouldn't think that even in that group, somebody would take advantage. And what's happened in politics is people have assumed that nobody will take advantage. And in this politics which has arisen here is that rules and safeguarding have been seen to be negative and bigoted and exclusionary. So we'll take them away. But I worry that others are taking advantage of this. And that's probably in politics is what I'm campaigning on. That's the principle I'm campaigning on is, freedom. I'm a big believer in freedom, in liberalism, in fairness, in social justice. But we must not be naive, and we must not ever get to the point where we think we can just trust each other to be nice to each other, because it doesn't work, and we all know it doesn't work really. And no matter how much we really want it to work, we've got to have rules, we've got to have safeguarding, we've got to have protections.
Yeah, that's very eloquently put. And something you touched on earlier in the conversation was this idea of feelings becoming prominent in the discussion. And one way that's sort of taken hold in recent years is this utter obsession with pronouns and the potential to misgender. I've noticed it's becoming ubiquitous online. I mean, I work in a corporate environment, and more email signatures are including pronouns, like, big bearded Jeff from accounting, he, him. Thanks, Jeff, for clearing that up. So how big is this issue? I suppose my first question before we get into the importance of pronouns is how much does it affect you, and what should be done from a sort of legal standpoint if you were to face misgendering? Where's the line between somebody being sincere and making a mistake versus it tipping over into harassment, I suppose?
Right, pronouns. I hate them. Sorry, I don't hate pronouns. If somebody asks me what are my pronouns, I say that I, me, and mine. Those are my pronouns. And if you're talking to me, you can use you, and yours. It's flippant, but there's something more serious going on here. I came out as trans when I was 42 years old.
Oh wow.
But I knew inside I was struggling with something. Now, if I'd been expected in those previous 42 years to put he, him on my signature line, I would have hated that. And in a meeting, I've seen it in meetings where somebody says, right, I'm sharing the meeting, my name is John Smith and my pronouns are he, him. The next person, my name is Jane Jones, my pronouns are she, her. And it's coming around the table. And what do you do if you're a trans person who's still in the closet?
Yes.
What do you do? When it comes around to me, do I say my name is Debbie Heyton and my pronouns are? What do I do? Do I out myself in that business meeting there and then, or do I say and my pronouns are he and him? And that nobody cares about that, Stephen. Nobody gives a damn. This virtue signal's going on. Nobody cares, and that's what hurts. Nobody really cares about trans people, or they wouldn't be doing that. They wouldn't be doing the pronouns thing. So anyway, that's my hobby horse about it.
No, I agree, and it seems like a way of just signalling your tribal allegiance, or, like you say, virtue signaling, letting people know you're the good guy, you care about trans people, this is important to you. And obviously they've not thought through the implications of it for actual trans people.
Yeah. And when you transition like I do now, I used to put more effort into it. I used to wear makeup and things like that. So I used to put more effort. But generally people see what I try to do and how to present myself. And if I overhear me being referred to as she, her, I think, well, perhaps, I'm doing something here. If I'm wearing a badge that says my pronouns are she, her, it just defeats the entire. I don't know. But I say these things, but other people who are not trans have been told this and told that they should be doing this because it's somehow helpful, and it isn't. Well, I don't think it is. But then you were talking about misgendering, and I don't care what pronouns people use about me. I really don't. I would say pronouns are there for you to describe me to a third person somewhere else. And if you find it easier to describe me by she, her, use she, her. If you find it easier to describe me by he, him, use he, him. If you want to hedge your bets, use they, them, but it's grammatically difficult, but I'm quite happy with it. I don't like it. Don't refer to me as it.
Nobody likes it.
Don't do that. But that's where I am. That's where I am with pronouns. Now, people do use he, him about me, and I think you've got to. I do listen to that, thinking, why are you using him? One might be I'm just not making enough of an effort. And they generally think that in the way that I'm presenting is he. That's fine, that's my fault, not made enough of an effort. It might be political. It might be that they think that they think there's a political issue going on, in which case, fine, I'm quite happy for you to. That's your politics. It might just be that some people think that pronouns should go with biology, and I've got a lot of sympathy for that. At least we know where we are if we do that. Or it can be abusive. And
Yeah.
it's when it's the abusive misgendering, that's when that's the misgendering I worry about. But that happens hardly ever. And you can tell when it happens. You can tell when that abusive misgendering happens. And the stuff you worry about, and I've said this 2 or 3 times before, usually when it comes from groups of men who have been drinking, that's when, but I stay away from those people, whether they're misgendering me or not. So, yeah, it's picking out that tiny bit of, the abusive misgendering, but abuse is abuse, and it's the abuse that's wrong there. So I can't get too excited. Well, I do get excited about the pronouns and the gendering, because I think it's unhelpful to dwell on it. Let pronouns be just descriptive terms that we use to describe people about others, and don't take it personally. That would be my view.
It's far too sensible. Can you not be more outraged about it, please? Well, I mean, we're keeping in this area of sort of pronouns and the guise of inclusivity, the word safety is thrown around a lot to help make trans people feel more safe. And we're often told that the mere discussion around this issue makes trans people feel unsafe. That's why we see you sort of gender critical feminists being deplatformed or hounded on academic soil. And often attached to that is the statistics thrown around on sort of trans suicide and even murders of trans people. And I just wanted to get your view on how truthful people are being with them statistics and how relevant that sort of thing is to the discussion. Right.
Safety. I'm tired of this thing. I really am. It's all safe. Safety has its place. I'm a union officer, and I appreciate health and safety. And my members, I want them to be safe at work, and I want practice to be safe. But the word safety has just taken on a complete new meaning, as opposed to safety goes far beyond where it should go. And about trans people staying safe, well, nobody's safe. We're all nobody's lives are safe because we're all going to die. That's that is a truth.
That's going to be the audio clip for this podcast on the trailer. Nobody's safe. We're all going to die. I'm just going to quote you on that.
It is. It's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to go out the house and breathe on other people because we've got to stay safe. And but this is another debate, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, are trans people safe in the UK? We're as safe as anybody else. We're actually having this conversation coincidentally on Transgender Day of Remembrance. Oh. Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance.
I ironically forgot.
Go on social media and you'll find it's a big thing today. So the day is all about remembering people who have been murdered. Trans people have been murdered, and there's a list of 375 people, and each one of those is a tragedy. So 375 trans people have been murdered worldwide in the last 12 months. And that's what people are remembering. And the world is not, the world's not a safe space for people because people get murdered. That's the truth, and we should be campaigning to stop that. But when you look at these figures, they tell quite a different story. First of all, we don't distinguish between people who are murdered because they are trans, as opposed to trans people are murdered. Those two things are different. People can be murdered for all sorts of reasons, not necessarily because they're trans, and that's never distinguished. But of those 375 people, 70% were in Latin America. A third were in Brazil. 125 in Brazil. And the vast majority was connected with the sex trade,
which is high risk in general.
Yeah, we should be saying, how can we stamp out the evils of prostitution in the world? Again, that's another debate. Another group is in the United States. The United States is not a particularly safe place for trans people, but there again, if you look at the gun culture in the US, again, the US is not a particularly safe space for anybody in the way that guns proliferate in the United States. So perhaps we should be campaigning for some decent gun control in the United States, like what we have in Europe. So then we come to Europe, and in the last 12 months, according to the official stats, which have been collated by the Transgender Europe, so I'm using the trans community's own stats. There's been 14 trans people murdered in Europe in the last year. That's not a lot. Now, six of those were migrants, which are then just starts to expose the link with poverty and powerlessness. So then we've got 8 trans people who are not migrants murdered in an entire continent in the entire year. Nobody in the UK, no trans people have been murdered in the UK this year or last year. You've got to go back to 2019 and 2019 before the last trans person was murdered in the UK. And over the last 14 years, there's been 11 trans people murdered in the UK. One by another trans person. And again, you look through this, and the picture which emerges is domestic violence, prostitution. There's a prostitute murdered in a hotel at Heathrow a few years back. These are tragedies, and these are things we should remember. But to say that because of this, the UK is a dangerous place for trans people is a total lie. It's not helping us. It's making some trans people feel paranoid that the world is out to get us, and it isn't. And it's painting an unhelpful picture. We should be celebrating instead what a tolerant, liberal society we live in, so that people, can transition and go on and do their jobs and live fulfilling lives in society, which is what I do and what many other trans people do. And that we should be celebrating, not saying it's a really dangerous place and we're unsafe, because it's not true. And it doesn't do trans people any good, I don't think.
I agree. I mean, I openly accept there's always work to do, but I think in the balance of things, we are progressing in the right direction. When people tend to say there's a huge problem with the UK and this issue, I have to ask, compared to where, I suppose. So that issue of safety is a big one, and I suppose just to sort of flip the impetus on it, the idea of safety is often at the forefront of gender critical feminist concerns about female spaces, female prisons, bathrooms, places, things like that. And I suppose, is it possible that focus could present trans people as a threat by default in the mindset of the public, focusing on this idea of if you're in an enclosed space with a trans person, you are at higher risk of being raped, for instance?
Well, it is why women have separate spaces for 2 reasons. One is that female and male bodies look different, and it protects the dignity.
Yeah.
And men men think that as well. I don't know about you, but when I was at school for PE, we had these dreadful open plan changing rooms. I don't know what your school was like, but mine was like that. So there was all the boys together in this open plan changing room, and the embarrassment we felt when the female PE teacher walked through.
Yeah.
It was, Mrs. Carter, and you think, where does this come? I think it's human. I think this is deep set in our nature. I really do, and I think it's part of us. I don't think that sense of embarrassment that 8-year-old boys have if they're in the changing rooms and a girl walks in is, and I say that because that's I can empathise with that.
Yeah,
and it must happen the other way around. Girls themselves, especially with the power imbalance between males and females, it can only be more difficult for females. It's bad enough for males when the power differential is in our advantage, is in our favour. So there is that, and also there is one of safety. Some men present a hazard, and we all know this. If your kids get lost in a crowd, you tell them to go and find a woman and ask the woman for help, not a man.
Yeah.
Not because we know that, not because men are probably going to do something nasty. It's that some men will, and we can never tell the difference. But this is the truth. And as as men, we know that, and we don't feel that's in any way being nasty to us. It's what I'm saying there is that is just normal safeguarding, but we're taking precautions. And what's happened when trans people, transsexuals, have transitioned male to female, to use that terminology, is that those safeguarding protections have been lifted for us, so that as transsexuals have used female facilities, have used women's changing rooms, have used all the women's spaces which we could possibly go into, including hospital wards, including prisons. Trans people who've had gender surgery have been housed in female prisons since the 1970s. This is nothing new. That's gone on, but it is a weakness in safeguarding. You can't, it isn't just, transsexuals are men who have transitioned. It's not just nice men or honourable men or good men. It's men, and the whole cohort of men can transition. So they've come over. But I guess there's always been two things in the past that have made it safer. Have mitigated the risk, to use another word. One is there wasn't many of us. We were few in number, so the magnitude of the risk was down. And secondly, there was the assumption that you'd had done to you what my cat had done to him when I was a kid. We didn't get taken to the vet to be done, but we'd been, we'd had gender surgery, which is the same thing. So there was the assumption that, our bodies had been changed, and that mitigated the risk. Most people, not everybody was happy with it, but most people thought it would be. Most people went with it and saw it as a reasonable hazard to accept. Now, that's how things used to be, and this is where Stonewall and other organisations like them started campaigning on self-identification in 2015. This was the big thing that Stonewall, when they jumped into trans rights, they decided that the assumption that people had gone through some sort of process to be trans, being done or whatever, was discriminatory. It was wrong. People should be free to be who they are, and certainly not be forced to be sterilised to be who they are, etc. So this idea of self-identification came through. We were not men and women because of our biology. We were men and women because of our feelings. A woman could have a penis. That was perfect. That was seen as perfectly okay. And that's so the rules changed. And if we don't think that the weakness in safeguarding, the vulnerability in safeguarding, which was offered to transsexuals, that wouldn't now attract any abusive man who was looking for a weakness in safeguarding, we're so naive. But even to say, well, I think these if I say, I think these safeguarding rules, these safeguarding weaknesses might be attracting abusive men. I get attacked. I get attacked for saying, are you saying that trans women are abusers, Debbie? And I say, no. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that trans women are abusers. I'm saying that abusers will use trans women to get what they want. And that, I think, is a very real concern. Women can't tell the difference between a transsexual and an abusive male who is trying their luck, chancing their arm on this. They can't tell the difference. And the only safe way, I'm using the word safety myself. What we need to do is we need to withdraw from those spaces. We may have been using them for years, but if women can't tell the difference and they need those spaces, then perhaps we need to campaign for our own spaces. It's a desperate situation that we're in that that rights that women have been taken for granted have been abused, and let's not say rights, but privileges that transsexuals have taken for granted have also been abused. And I think I think we need to withdraw from those privileges. And I've said that, I've campaigned on that. I think it's the only way forward to go back to facts and biology. But this is one reason why I'm, of course, if Stonewall hadn't opened their mouth, the old way wasn't perfect, and it did introduce hazards, but it was working. But it's been destroyed by naivety and yes, Stonewall and friends.
Well, I suppose my last question then, keeping in this area of politics, but more party politics, it's been a fairly unsteady several years for politics. A lot of people have been blindsided by a lot of the political movements and decisions. We've had Brexit, the rise of Trump, a Tory majority in the UK blindsided a lot of people. And I tend to feel that elections are won on set issues rather than the whole comparison of policy and things like this. Certain things that'll swing it either way due to the perception of the general public. And one of these things seems to be gender. Now, fortunately, a lot of the more extreme gender ID proclamations don't get a lot of support at the polls, it seems. This idea of whatever you want to term it, far left progressivism, some people call it woke, doesn't seem to get a lot of support at the ballot. Now, we've just had a Labour MP, and Labour in general seem to have this desire to implement self-ID as part of the Gender Recognition Act. And I'm just wondering, how big of a problem is that for Labour in the eyes of the public in terms of being not only an effective opposition, but having a chance of winning at the next election?
It's a huge problem. I'm a member of the Labour Party, and I campaign for the Labour Party. I do knock on the door and say, what are your concerns? And gender never comes into it.
Right.
What comes into it, what people are interested in is jobs, health, education, public services. Those are the crucial things that affect them. They may be affected by images of people in desperate situations arriving in dinghies in Dover are having an impact. That's having a huge impact on that. Politicians need to know, you need to be aware of that issue. But gender doesn't come into it until those politicians start sitting in the TV studio before the election. And that's where elections will be lost. I think the classic case is Joe Swinson, the leader of the Lib Dems at the time, immediately before the 2019 election, when where she was just torn to pieces on her ideas about gender, and what's a woman? And politicians on the left, Labour, the SNP, I guess, in Scotland, and the Lib Dems, are all going to be asked that question. What's a woman, Keir? What's a woman, Ed? And what they should just say is, a woman's an adult human female. Now, let's talk about jobs, health, education, and public services.
Yeah. But
they don't. They say, well, it's not as complicated it's not as simple as it used to be. Now we know a bit more because sometimes, and they just make muppets of themselves. And it's just a gift to a political journalist who's interviewing these people, because what you want your killer question to make them squirm. And here's the killer question. And what's worse is because everybody knows what the answer really should be, adult human female, they can't prepare for it, or they have prepared for it. So you see the next sidestep. So it's that, well, yes, I hear that question, but what I think is that everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. There's all those sort of sidesteppings that you can do.
Yeah.
But people know the question's coming. And, me, I'm just going to be ready for it, before the next election, when the party leaders are going around the TV studios. I'm going to hear I'm going to listen to what they're saying on all the policies. But what I'm interested in is, what's your latest ruse on how to avoid the adult human female question? And the only way to deal with that is to answer it honestly. But it's going to take some bravery, because they will upset people, and they'll upset people who won't get their votes, definitely won't get their votes. But the vast majority of people don't really, the vast majority of people know exactly what a woman is. fact, everybody I think knows what a woman is, but the vast majority of people are quite happy to accept that definition we've had for millennia. But that will be an issue, and it's an issue that they need to deal with, and it's a one that they're not going to be able to avoid, because everybody knows it's going to be on the list of questions that they can be asked, and there's every answer is either a deflection, a sidestep, or just bluff and bluster, keep talking until the journalist gets so fed up that they'll ask something else. That's another way of dealing with those sort of questions. So, yeah, I don't think but the frustration I have with party leaders who won't answer that question honestly is, I don't think they would lose many votes by being honest on that question at all. And the votes that they would lose are from people who are holding them to ransom. And do you really want their votes anyway?
That's a great point. Debbie, this has absolutely flown. A lot of sense. I really enjoyed myself. It's been great fun as well. Is there anything you'd like to point people towards before I let you get back to your morning? Where can they find you on social media, for instance? Where can they find more of your writing?
Right. If my website where all my writing's archived is debbieheyton.com. So that's my own website. My Twitter handle is @Debbie Heyton. If you Google my name, you see it comes up. If you want to find out what other people think about me, there are some takedown pieces there's some hit pieces of me there as well. But I'm quite happy for people to read about me. I'm quite happy for people to say what they think about me. What I'm trying to do is speak out for truth, for science, and for reason.
Excellent, Debbie. I'm really grateful that you are engaging in this space and making a lot of sense at the same time. I think we need more voices like yours on this issue for sure.
Okay, thanks very much. Really lovely to talk to you, Steve.
You too.